Buckle up, excellence junkies, because this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome to Rocket Fuel. Do you wish that you could surround yourself with people that love to kick ass just like you? Well, come to my party, baby, and meet some of the brightest stars in the entrepreneurial galaxy, because it is my mission to give these entrepreneurs a platform to declare what they are on this planet to accomplish and to show you why they are rocket fuel. Yes, guys. Oh, I am so very excited about this episode, my dear Rocketeers. We're going to get super serious, but this is rocket fuel for like our world, for society, that will unite us all. Have you ever been in a situation where you have witnessed some sort of injustice, whether it's racial or gender or just something just is not right, and you're not sure if you can find it in yourself to step up and say something or do something, right? You may not feel like, oh, you're the activist, but I think we're at a time in our lives that we all need to kind of understand who we are and what we want to stand up to, like what's within our comfort level and realm, but we all need to stand up. And today I get the opportunity to meet, to introduce you to the ultimate upstander. We have Dr. Omekongo Dibinga. He's the founder of UPstander International. All right, so I'm going to ask him all about it. But you are a motivator. You dedicate yourself to inspiring people to stand in confidence and actually stand up to injustice. So tell me about that. Tell me about like that journey, please.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I'm really excited to be able to be here and speak. I love that term, Rocketeers. That's just so awesome. And this organization, it really started, even though I started the organization as an adult, the process started when I was a child. Growing up, I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, with Congolese parents, which is where my name comes from. And just growing up during that time, the 70s and 80s and 90s and the like, it was a society where people had extreme disrespect for people of African descent. And you can hear from my voice, I don't have what people would call a stereotypical African accent, but just by hearing my name, people would stereotype me and call us all types of names. And it was really problematic for me. They would call us names like African bush boogie, African booty scratcher. And, they would ask us things like, do you have monkeys in your closet? Like all of the, and I not only got it from people in my community, neighbors, and they're like, I got it at school, even from some of my teachers. And so we were bullied, my brothers, my sisters, we were bullied a lot, beaten up, rocks thrown at us. And so just growing up in that type of situation, looking around, seeing people who didn't really stand up for us was very problematic. Then as I got older, I started to learn more and see other people who are dealing with other types of ignorance, maybe because they were Jewish or because they were Muslim or because they were poor or because they had a physical challenge. And again, seeing these situations where people were not speaking up. And that's what kind of led me. It was the bullying I experienced that led me to discover poetry. I discovered people like the great Maya Angelou and Nikki Giovanni, and they inspired. I learned their poems before I started writing my own and started performing at events. And the more I performed, the more the bullying stopped. People realized we had more things in common than we did that were separate. And that just led me on this trajectory to just work to always be a bridge builder and work to bring communities together, which eventually led to the founding of this organization, UPstander International, which is just focused on helping people take a stand against injustice wherever they find it.
Wow. Okay. There's so much to unpack here. Okay, I'm going to rewind. Because, I mean, our Rocketeers, we're coming from all different, backgrounds and situations. And I think it's important if folks have not experienced it to appreciate the experience. Now, when you experienced folks saying those things,
Mm-hmm.
was it sometimes in jest, or was it always mean-spirited?
Well, to me, it was, regardless of whether it was in jest or not, it was always mean spirited because I didn't know these people, right? So they didn't
Mhm.
know me well enough. Everybody has their inside jokes with different communities. Women have it with each other, different groups. Everybody has inside jokes, but you didn't know me well enough to make those inside jokes. So even if you thought you were
Woo!
cool, to me, it was always some type of, you're just hitting me with something that I wasn't even expecting. I'm like, why are you calling me like a Haitian butt scratcher? Haiti's not even on the African continent. But it's
Right.
just like they were just reaching in every single way. And then, back in those days, yeah, Tarzan still pops up every 10 years or so. But you had those Sally Struthers commercials with, starving kids in Ethiopia. People were doing anything possible to liken you or connect you to an animal. So it was all hurtful. I can never remember a situation. I mean, I wore a cowrie shell necklace. You ever see those necklaces? They kind of look like shark teeth, like
Yeah.
they're white. I wore that to school one day, and a kid walked up and just punched me in the face twice, just because he was like, "Oh, take that stuff off," and I wouldn't do it. And so it just never felt right, even the jokes, because everywhere I turned, and like I said, even some of the educators were getting in on it. It never felt like it was in jest.
Yes, yes. And so I purposely ask the question that way because I feel like sometimes when things like that are said, if if the person that says it feels like I was just joking, man,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
You said it perfectly. Like I couldn't have set it up any better, in the sense that, but I wasn't in on the joke.
That's right. That's
It's a
right.
it's a joke when both of us are, when you know me, first of all, you know that I would find that funny, then it's a
Mm-hmm,
mutual joke,
mm-hmm,
right? But
mm-hmm.
if you're joking at somebody and the person's not in on the joke, then guess what? It's mean-spirited.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think that it's the, we kind of get caught up in the fact that we're in this transitional phase where we've grown up. If you've grown up in the 70s, 80s, I mean, and earlier, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
um these are the things that not only our parents taught us, but society and TV and all of those things. You know, Omekongo, when you say, when you talk about the Sally Struthers
Mm-hmm.
commercials, like, when you think about it now, I have seen almost the exact commercials about saving dogs and cats.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
Yep.
it's literally just switch the pictures out. Like the
Yep.
same music and the same
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That subconsciously affects people.
Yep.
It's subconsciously influencing, and it's influencing their behavior. So what happens is, we need to be aware. Like,
That's right.
it starts with an internal awakening and
Mm-hmm.
awareness to say, what has happened has influenced us all
Yes.
across the board, to the
Yes.
point is, even as a Latina, like, I might receive something because
Mm-hmm.
of my experience of, you know, somebody running behind our car, throwing rocks, saying "spick, spicks." You know what I mean?
Yes.
All the
Yes.
Because I've had those experiences, that maybe something that is said in jest is received differently because of my experience.
That's right. That's right. And it's real because we're all products of our experiences. And it really comes down to, I teach intercultural communication at American University. And one of the things we always talk about are perceptions versus values. And, if I'm holding something in my hand, like this phone or something, it may have a particular value on the market, a couple $100 or whatever. But I lost my dad in 2020, February 2020. And if this was the last thing that he gave me, well, the summer of 2020, I brought him back to the United States in February because he was in Congo and he was sick. And then he died a few months later. But if this was the last thing that he gave to me, before he passed, there's a lot more value on it. I perceive it a lot greater way. But if you don't know that and you come and look at it in one particular way, then you're not going to respect it in the same way. Think about something that was passed down to somebody whose great grandfather died in the Holocaust, or someone who may have died in fighting in Vietnam or something like that. You can't just walk into a room and expect everything to be the way that you see it. You have to do the work to understand how someone could be looking at the same thing and have a completely different idea. You know, like those optical illusions that people show, where if you look at it one way, you see a cup, but if you look at it one way, you see two people looking at each other, or the one that looks like a duck or a rabbit, right? We're looking at the same thing, but our perceptions receive them differently. The question becomes, is it okay for you to see something differently? And is that okay for us to build a conversation on? A lot of people say, don't judge me until you walk a mile in my shoes. But in order to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you got to be willing to take your shoes off first. But a lot of us just don't want to do that. We just want to be comfortable, see it the way we want to see it, and to hell with what everybody else thinks. That's not how we build an upstanding community in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That perspective is key, because for somebody to feel comfort in saying, I was insulted by that, or that was hurtful, right?
That's right.
Then the other person has to realize, right? So let's say this happens to me, and I could say, okay, let's assume that because of that person's perspective and experiences, this is okay for them. I'm now going to communicate that was hurtful.
That's right.
Or I was hurt by that. Now that other person can be like, well, I didn't mean to hurt you, or appreciate that that was a perspective that was shared and have a difficult conversation.
But there's a third option as well, which is they can just choose not to care. And, you know, we got to remember, you know, what Dr. King said at the end of the day, the two most dangerous things on the planet are sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And, you know, sincerely, for real, Wanda, like sincere ignorance, you don't know what you don't know. And that's in the area that you were talking about. Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. That's real, right? But then you got, in this society today, you got that conscientious stupidity, where a lot of people are like, yeah, I know, but I don't care. I don't need to respect you. I'm not, quote unquote, politically correct. Oh, there's too much politeness. Everyone's scared to talk nowadays. And that's where we are today in these cultural wars that people have set up in order to gain political or economic power. And that's where it becomes extremely dangerous. But if you act on either one, sincere ignorance or conscientious stupidity, you can still hurt people.
Yeah. So it's heavy, because I feel, I mean, I don't even want to say it's heavier now. It's not fair to say it's heavier now, because it's always been.
Yes.
I think maybe the only reason why the weight is maybe felt more across our society is because we're all starting to get closer to the line of stepping up. And that's heavy, because when you feel like, damn, like I need to do something, like this isn't something that I just leave for the activists. There's a lot of self-development that needs to happen to get you ready for that. And I already know we can be talking forever. So for my Rocketeers, we're going to continue the conversation. But what's really important is Omekongo wrote this wonderful book called Grow Towards Your Greatness. And I'm going to ask you to explain the G.R.O.W as an acronym, right? But you actually offered the audience a free ebook version of that, which is amazing. But this is part of a tool that we can all use, not only for to achieve our greatness for, you know, your business, your home life, your relationships and such, but especially in light of preparing us to have these difficult conversations.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, this book is valuable for you across the board, but I know that for you framed it in light of supporting the upstander, right?
Yes, absolutely. And as I wrote it, it was written as a motivational book, like you said, when I did it. But as I started speaking, I started to realize that people needed more motivation as it relates to having these courageous conversations around social justice. So the grow is G.R.O.W, right? The first word is give. Now, in the book, I talked about it as it relates to service, giving back to the community, understanding the idea that the more and more you give to the community, the more and more it's going to give back to you. Conversely, the more and more you take from it, the more it's going to take from you. That also applies to our conversations relating to social justice. I'm telling people to give their time as an engaged listener. Give your service as it relates to going and actually putting yourself in spaces where you can hear different conversations. One of the other issues, Wanda, why things are so tense nowadays is because of internet and social media and 24-hour news cycles, where we're getting the same information sent to us because we're going to the same networks every single time. We're not expanding our knowledge. And so really people are going online, not looking for information, but looking for affirmation, surrounding themselves with people who think like them. But if you have that giving mentality, you have to remember that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we have to use them in proportion. So give your time as an engaged listener. If someone comes up to you and says Black Lives Matter, some people automatically, their retort instantly is all lives matter. But have you given any thought to why the person said Black Lives Matter? Have you actually stopped, or just you want to just shut somebody down? It's like in relationships, like, when you're arguing with your partner, and rather than actually listening to what that person is saying, you're waiting for your turn to speak. That's not working. We got to sit back and actually hear what people are saying. And once we do that, we can start building something forward. Now, the R in grow stands for release. You got to learn to let things go so that you can grow. You got to learn to let go of people and things that are holding you back, that prevent you from being able to do things like forgive other people. That also relates to our conversation here, because you have to, if you want to get involved in courageous conversations, you have to do the work to release the preconceived notions you have about other people that are preventing you from engaging in that conversation. And so you might need to release the 5 people around you who might be racist. Because I got news for you. If you're surrounded by 5 racist people, you are racist number 6. If you are surrounded by 7 sexist people, you are sexist number 8. There is no middle ground. The list goes on and on. So you have to make sure you're surrounded by people who are helping you grow, surrounded by people who are also interested in learning and challenging their own stereotypes and their own biases. When you look at what happened with George Floyd, what was as heinous as what happened to when he had that knee on his neck for 9 minutes was terrible enough. But one of the things that other things that happened, Wanda, is that you probably saw this. There was a George Floyd challenge that was going on around the internet where people were recreating the George Floyd murder and posting on their social media sites. So the question becomes, if that shows up on your social media site for all of the Rocketeers out there, do you shut it down? Do you block the people? Do you let them know this is not the space for that? If you don't do that, you are part of the problem. There is no middle ground here. Silence is compliance. And that's what we mean when we say release, which leads us to number 3, right?
Ooh, I'm going to hold you. I'm going to pause you. Ooh, I know you're on a roll. And I'm like,
I'm good. I'm good.
I know it. But I'm going to create a purposeful tension, okay?
Sure,
because I talked about this book. I'm going to give you Rocketeers the opportunity to be like, oh, Nelly, I need this book. So you're going to text for it. And hopefully if you've been listening to Rocket Fuel, you're going to bring out your cell phone right now. If you're driving, you're going to pull over. If you're running, you're going to stop. You're going to text RF for Rocket Fuel, RF-greatness to 411321 if you're in the US, okay? RF-greatness is the catchword. You're going to text it to 411321 if you are in the US. If you're outside of the US, then you can text it either, let's say if you're in Canada, you can text it to 1-909-741-1321. Or you can go to WhatsApp if you're not in Canada, and you can text to 1-909-741-1321. This will be in the show notes. If you're listening to this, RF-greatness is the message, and make sure to provide the email address that you're going to receive this ebook in. Do not delay. First of all, this is an amazing gift. Take action now. We don't want you to say, oh, I will do this afterwards. That's why, jokingly but seriously, I tell you, just pull over and do it. Because this is transformative, right? If inside your gut, you're like, inside your heart, right? Your heart is like pitter pattering because you're like, man, I had that situation. I know, right? That's your body telling you like, this is resonating with you. So I want you to give yourself the gift or accept the gift that Omekongo actually offered to you. Okay. So now you talked about giving, you talked about releasing. I have a question about releasing.
Yes.
What the heck happens when the toxicness is in your family?
Hey, to me, just because they're blood doesn't mean that you have to associate with them. Because really, at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself the question, what is this relationship doing to me? And so if they're siblings, work cousins, parents, in this book that I'm writing on dealing with lies about Black people, I'm interviewing people talking about their experiences of racism in America and things that they were taught about Black people. And many of the people who are not Black who are doing these interviews are talking about, I learned this from my father. I learned these stereotypes from my sister. I learned them from my grandmother. And they said, as I started to learn to be anti-racist, I had to stop associating with them. I had to let them know that, look, hey, if we're still going to have this relationship, these actions have to stop. And that's really one of the scariest things to do. But you have to do that because people are either bringing you up or they're bringing you down. There is no middle ground. And so the family's the hardest place to do it, but you have to do it. I mean, look, we had a civil war in this country where it was brother against brother, right? I mean, when your values matter, it doesn't matter who the person is that you have to separate yourself from.
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of it is this is why it starts with you, right? Part of it is understanding what is important, what are the things that you realize are toxic to yourself, once you have children, to your children. And you realize like the little things that were said that you laughed off or whatever, like one, they're still there kind of in your head. But then I found that once I have my children, 6 and 2 years old, that little things that were acceptable, like now I have to lovingly be like, that's not right to say.
That's right.
About right there are like I could have like a family member that might literally just say, oh yeah, like your aunt's eyes are chinky, like literally just that was
that's right.
And even talking about family, like in their mind they're not saying it as an insult, by the way, because they were just taught that that's how you refer to a slanted eye. I mean, my own grandmother, it has slanted eyes, but we'll be like, oh yeah, we're all chinky in the family, and then it's like, So to be able to say, okay, I acknowledge it as sincere ignorance. So I'm going to say, that's not really right to say anymore, and try to acknowledge it. And then if it happens now, then if there's resistance, right? So part of it is what I have found effective, right? Is I didn't put the term that you just put, you just shared, the sincere ignorance. Part of it is like, okay, they really don't know, they don't realize. And also it's something that they've been doing for 60, 70, 80 years, right? So now it's just a matter of establishing like an awareness and a boundary that like, I prefer not to say it here, or I have to have the conversation now with my daughter that wasn't right because she might actually accidentally say it and stuff like that. And then there are the people that are just overtly, at a certain point, you may stand your ground several times, and then you realize, it's not going to change. Now they're being purposeful. They're being what is the other term that you mentioned? The stupidity, the
conscientious stupidity.
Right? They're just like, no, I you've expressed that this upsets you, and I don't care.
That's right.
And some of it, sometimes it's just like it's keeping the boundaries of I love you, but I'm not going to have these sorts of discussions with you because they're a trigger, and I don't want to. So I mean, it's a lot of work.
It is, but at the same time, it's necessary work. And even with those people who want to remain conscientiously stupid, sometimes what you do is you just plant that seed. Someone said if you say something negative to someone, they have to hear the positive opposite 17 times before they believe it. I've had many situations where people who, when I tried to educate them on something, weren't feeling it, But 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, they're like, you said this to me back in this time and you were right. It's sort of like, when you go back to school and visit your teachers, right? And you say, thanks for telling me, I get it now. So sometimes if they hear it from me, they may not hear it. But now they hear it from me and they get it from Wanda. Then they get it from Wanda and from me and Nicole. And maybe over like a 3-year span, that's what some people are going to be instant. Some people, you just got to plant those seeds. And you don't know what you don't know until you're exposed to it. Once you're exposed, what you do with it is up to you.
And you know what? To that point, I think this is really important because if you decide to stand up, right, you may be chances are you will be very disappointed that you didn't completely transform somebody because you stood up that one time, right? I think part of the understanding is the perspective is the fact that it took 60 years, it took 70 years, it took 30 years, 40, it took time for that person to be like that. And so I would argue to say that it takes everybody time, because just as it took them time to get to that point, it's going to take time for them to transform.
That's right.
If that person feels like, wow, they transformed right then and there, guess what? There was probably another seed. And you got them at the time where it finally all clicked together.
That's right.
But sometimes you could be the seed. And so be patient and be loving in how you express it, because I think it gets absorbed better. And when they walk away, just to me, I make it my mission that however I communicate it to them, that hopefully it got them to think.
Yeah. And you also got to be mindful of the venue where you're doing it, because a lot of people want to save face. Like if we're in front of a whole bunch of people at a restaurant or something and your friend says something and you call them out, they're going to be so embarrassed or upset that they're not trying to hear it. Sometimes you got to pull people aside. But whatever it is, you have to be willing to do it without fear. And that's what the O in G.R.O.W stands for.
Yes.
It's overcome, right? It's overcome. You got to overcome your fear. When we talk about living your best life, we got to understand what Zig Ziglar said, that, fear is FEAR and it's false evidence appearing real. When you're getting out there challenging yourself to date, maybe ask someone out on a date or get a new job or start a business, have that fear, but use it as motivation to push yourself forward. And so as it relates to being an upstander, you might be concerned or scared of having these courageous conversations, but you should be more scared of the consequences if you don't have these conversations. When you look at people like Hitler, people talk about Hitler like he was some type of Martian. Hitler was a human being who put himself in situations where he did not allow himself to be challenged and surrounded himself by people who wouldn't challenge him, and then went on to do some of the most heinous acts in history. What if he got challenged more at that young age? What if people really forced him to confront his biases? Could it have been a different outcome? But when you surround yourself by people who are scared to challenge you, you're going to end up, when you look at what happened, in this country, and it's not about whatever your political affiliation is, but people who engage in political violence feel like they can do whatever they want because they feel like they can get away with it because people aren't challenging them. And so that's what I'm saying. Don't be fearful of it. You got to overcome that fear because there's a greater good. The greater good is harmony. It's bringing people together. It's less political violence. It's less racial violence, less gender-based violence, whatever it is. Our society deserves that. That's what leads us to the W in G.R.O.W, which is win. Believing that we have a winning mentality, that we will win if we do not give in. Wanda, you talked about it. People may have learned stuff over 30, 40, 50 years, but people keep going. All of the rights that you and I enjoy right now, people had to die for them. Depending on where you go back 10, 15, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, people fought so that we can be here. What are you going to do today that 20, 30 years from now, people are going to say, because they did that in 2022, 2023, 24, I can enjoy this today. I can in 2075, in 2096. That's what it's about, not giving up. When you're trying to fight to bring the people together, you can never quit.
I think I've always had this thought, and it's just coming to me that this is that you're the appropriate person to have the conversation with. But I think that there's this feeling around activism, right? Like, ooh, well, those are the noisy people.
Yeah.
And, and it's interesting because I'm not the noisy person,
Mm-hmm.
but I choose to support the noisy. I feel like you need the noisy people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need the activists that are gonna be like,
Sure,
this is
sure.
what I believe, because society, like, we need to hear it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you had a whole bunch of people, like I think of not only as a Latina, as a woman, a young woman in corporate America, and like all the things that I was experiencing at that point. But in order for me to make a difference, I felt like I kind of had to play the game a
Sure.
little bit, right? So it
Absolutely.
was this comfort of like, I'm playing the game so that I can get to the point where I can have a voice and I can
Mm-hmm.
create change, and I can expose people to what my Latin culture is in a way
Sure.
that is not like, "Ugh," in your face. And so that was like my method.
Yeah.
And at one point I was kind of like, I had this feeling like, man, but why are you so loud about that? Like, I'm trying to like live, and I'm
Yeah.
living in the trenches, and you're right. But I believe that we need both,
Absolutely.
because we need the squeaky wheels, and then the squeaky wheels also need to we need to respect each other as like a team, right? Because we may be doing work, especially if we get to grow into our greatness, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get to realize what's important and do some of the subtle work within our comfort zone, but do the work. And
Yeah.
we need folks to create the awareness so people become awakened to the fact that that it's an issue, that maybe I should be doing more work, that because by just being accepting of it, I may be part of the problem. But what are your
Absolutely.
thoughts around that? Because some folks may be like, are you telling me to become an activist? And that
Mm-hmm.
feels like, I don't want to be that person.
Well, look, activism means a lot of things. Like, there's a difference between being an activist and act as if you really care, right? There's a
Ah,
whole different scenario, right? Look, let's be mindful of the fact, that song, the great song, Deo, Deo, right? Harry
uh-huh,
Belafonte, right? One of
uh-huh.
the greatest singers that we know. And a lot of people saw him singing, but he was also using his money to fund the movement, the civil rights movement, right? And even in this day in his 90s, still an activist, right? And there are other people out there who you see on television who are not, Harry Belafonte has always been vocal in addition to his art, of course, but you also have people who are not that vocal. So look, if I'm protesting a company, and I'm just saying randomly, I'm not saying, Pepsi is doing this or that negatively. I'm just using them as an example. If there's a policy that I don't like that Pepsi is doing, and I'm fighting and I'm out there and I'm protesting and so on and so forth, if they ultimately decide to agree with what I'm saying, someone in that organization has to sign off on changing the name of, or endorsing Black Lives Matter, or making this park happen in the community. And I'll never know that person's name, right?
Having the difficult conversation within the corporate environment
That's right.
to bridge.
That's right. And that's why I love going into the corporations and doing these talks with them about it, because it's not about always being vocal. It's about simple things like, what do your policies look like? What's going on in your HR department as it relates to your hires and all of that? You don't have to make the big prolific statements and all of that other type of stuff, the little things. And so it's the people in HR, it's people on the legal team, it's people who are in the C-suites and all of that who are going to make those decisions. And like, they don't have to be vocal and loud, like people like myself. We have to do this together every single day. I mean, there are people out there who are funding different movements and you don't even know what their politics are. And some
Right.
people want to get in there and use their influence to fund things privately. It's completely fine. The goal is for all of us to be working towards finding common ground in these uncommon times, which is one of the biggest topics of places I go to speak nowadays, because people just want to figure out how to do that. And everybody has a role to play, but you got to play your role.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this is awesome stuff. Oh my goodness. Okay, this was only supposed to be 20 minutes. We needed to go on, and I don't even want to start another topic because, this could be problematic, but I so appreciate your time, and not your willingness, your mission to bring up these conversations, right? Like to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I get to, you became the rocket fuel to starting the conversation. Right?
That's our goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why you're here. That's why we love sharing your story. So I want to invite the audience one more time. Please, 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 if this is intriguing.
Before you invite them, is it all right when we're done if I close out with a poem?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was going to ask you for final words. A poem is even better.
Awesome. Awesome.
Excellent. All right. So text RF-greatness to 411321. If you're in the US, make sure to provide your email address instantaneously, and you will receive the ebook, Grow Towards Your Greatness, 10 Steps to Living Your Best Life. And if you are outside of the US, remember, you can use WhatsApp or text 1-909-741-1321. And the catchword is RF-greatness. Provide your email address. While we do that, I'm just going to let a little disclaimer go along the bottom, and thank you so much, and ask you to share some final words, please.
First of all, I just want to thank you, Wanda, for what you're doing, and I want to thank your entire community. I really appreciate it, and this is a conversation that we just need to keep continuing. So if anyone wants more information about me, they can go to UPstanderInternational.com or Omekongo.com. I'm at Omekongo on all the social media platforms. And I want to do anything possible to help us all grow towards our greatness. And with that, I'm going to share this poem, which is dedicated to all of y'all who want to do that.
Yes.
They say that greatness is a choice. But what have you chosen? You've been frozen in time and broken in mind. For too long, the same song playing in your head, living in breath, but better off dead. But who said that you didn't have the power? Who said this is not your hour? You've been showered with a steady stream of words that kill your dreams. But since you're still breathing, then someone has lied to you, tried to deny you of your own potential inside you. If you just decide to, let no one deride you. Don't even let them get beside you as you unearth the new you. Stop listening to naysayers and decide to do you. No more pity parties, sob stories, and boo-hoos. If no one told you that you're great, then let me be the first to. If you develop the thirst to drink from Faith's fountain, you'll develop the might to move mountains. You see, we remove tons of dirt to find 1 ounce of gold. So we'll ask you to remove tons of hurt and just uncover 1 ounce of your soul. You'll set yourself on a true path of excellence, getting out of your passenger seat and driving your own car, reaching for the moon, but maybe only landing among the stars. You see, you have greatness inside you, but you must choose to be great. Blaze a path of excellence, leaving fear in your wake. All you need is already inside you. You just must believe in yourself. Grow towards your greatness, Rocketeers, and discover your true wealth.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you have an amazing day, Omekongo, and to my dear Rocketeers, have a rockin' day. Bye now. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, every one of our episodes is boosted by a value-packed keyword called a catchword. Yeah. This allows our audiences to text to receive even more value from our guests. So take advantage of that great value. And if you share your expertise by guesting on podcasts or TV or speaking in front of live or digital audiences, then you're leaving anonymous fans behind. So go get a catchword at catchwords.com, KETCH words.com, and use podcast20 as a promo code for 20% off your setup fee. Look, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Rocket Fuel podcast so you never miss your jolt of rocket fuel. Until next time, adios.